Today on Talk to Kimi, I'm delighted to welcome TV and radio presenter Ms. Kaye Adams. Hi Kaye, how are you?
Hi Kimi, I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all, thanks. Kaye, did you always want to go into journalism?
Well, it depends how far back you go, I suppose. By the time I got to university and I got involved with the student newspaper, I realised, this was something that I was very interested in. Probably not before then, because to be honest, I didn't really know much about journalism. I originally had thought, sort of doing my hires and stuff like that, I was really keen to get into law. That was a much more recognisable profession, if you like. Mm-hmm. But at university, I sort of changed tack, and as I say, getting involved with the student newspaper just caught me, and I thought, this is it.
You started out as a political journalist and went down to Westminster, and impressively you managed to bag an interview with the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. Did she offer you a scone and a cup of tea?
No, she didn't. No, she wasn't what I expected, I have to say. Obviously she was this very formidable woman with an incredible reputation, so I was really very nervous, and it had been a bit of a fluke, really, in terms of securing the interview. I mean, I wrote off this very speculative letter, never expecting a response, so I was absolutely amazed when I did get a positive response. Building it up in my head as I headed off to go and do the interview, with a film crew in tow, preparing myself for a really, really rough time, Mm-hmm. And she was like your favourite auntie. Very sort of pleasant, very warm. She was kind of clever. When I look back at it now, I think she was probably really astute in that she spotted that I was pretty young and green and nervous, and so mm-hmm. she mollycoddled me a little bit. So any kind of spikiness that I had managed to work up, was completely dissipated, and she took control of the situation, I would say, absolutely. But she didn't do it in a harsh way. Mm-hmm. She was very nice.
Okay. If you were to interview her today, what kind of approach would you take now, given your experience?
How would I tackle her with a bit more, a few more air miles? Yeah, it's interesting when you're trying to interview somebody who has got such a fearsome reputation, mm-hmm. and there's an expectation that both parties should be very much on guard, and it's like a fight, really, or a sort of sword fight, if you like, jousting with each other and trying to score points. And to a certain extent, the public expects that mm-hmm. between, an interviewer and a guest, usually a political guest who's got a formidable reputation. And that's always the way that it's tempting to go into it as an interviewer. But actually, from experience, I think that sometimes what would appear to be a softer interview mm-hmm. can sometimes be more effective. Because if you have got someone who is, a really impressive character, and as Margaret Thatcher undoubtedly was, she's going to be really difficult to catch out. She's completely across her brief. People like her completely across their brief. They're very intellectually capable. They're very confident. They're very familiar with all of the kind of tricks and tips and arguments. So you've got a hard job trying to catch them out. So sometimes actually trying to disarm them a little bit mm-hmm. without being creepy can get you a little bit more. And so if I was to be in a situation, which obviously I would be, to interview Margaret Thatcher again, then I wouldn't go in all guns blazing, because I would lose.
Over the past couple of years, it's been really hard to avoid political issues. We've had the Scottish independence vote, now we have the debate looming over whether to stay in the EU. In your opinion, if we leave, what impact do you think that'll have on the Eurovision Song Contest?
Well, obviously it's going to be really devastating, and it's something that really keeps me awake at night. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter who's in the Eurovision now is not the EU countries, is it? I mean, Russia is in the Eurovision Song Contest, so I guess whether we leave or stay, we will still be able to take part in the Eurovision Song Contest if indeed we choose to. I have to say, I mean, I know the Eurovision Song Contest is, for a lot of people, they just love it and they have a party, and, you may be one of them, Kimi. It leaves me cold, the Eurovision Song Contest.
No, I used to like it when Terry Wogan presented it just for his quips, but...
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, with my mum and dad and my brother, God, we loved it. It was a major event, the Eurovision Song Contest. But then again, so was Miss World. Change days. And I think I would leave the Eurovision Song Contest where Miss World has been left.
Right, moving forward, you've appeared on many shows, including Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Countdown, Mastermind, and Celebrity Wipeout. Did you find it really hard to prepare for kind of physical competition?
Well, I really wanted to do Total Wipeout, to be honest, because I had watched the programme and I just thought it was hilarious. I used to watch it with the kids and we thought it was the funniest thing ever. And then the other attraction was that it was filmed in Argentina, and I've always wanted to go to Argentina.
That's a good enough reason.
It really was. You thought, well, it's a bit of nonsense. It's a week in my life. How am I ever going to get to Argentina, spend a week in Buenos Aires and tackle those big red balls? Of all these kind of shows that I've been on, that was definitely the one that I was most excited about, but it was also the one that I was most misguided about, because somewhere in my deluded brain, I genuinely thought I might be quite good at it. And it is still a source of huge disgruntlement and shame with me that I was quite as crap as I was. And, it's always popping up on Challenge TV or some, crazy channel, and the kids just think it is the funniest thing ever, and they take the mickey out of me mercilessly for how bad it was. But I can't even watch it. Just see this kind of pathetic middle-aged old lady tiptoeing round the course, and it just makes me wince. It's horrible. Though Buenos Aires is a very nice place, and I would highly recommend it.
Okay, I would consider it, but certainly not doing the show itself. You met your husband-to-be when he was your tennis coach, so you've obviously kept very active over the years. And did you actually get with him so he wouldn't make you practice as hard?
Well, yeah, funnily enough, Ian and I, we're not married, by the way, but we've been together
apologies.
for a long time. No, that's all right. He is the father of my children, so I guess that qualifies him for something. Yeah, we have played tennis together on maybe 3 or 4 occasions. We just don't do it. I think we realised very early that this would be a recipe for a disaster. So he wasn't actually my tennis coach. He was the tennis coach at the club that I was playing at, still play at. He was just this young, very long-limbed boy with these very short shorts who worked in Italy for half the year, so he would be punting about with his Brian May haircut, not as it is now, but maybe 30 years ago, and his tanned legs. And I actually thought he was a bit up himself and had a hip for himself. So it was never about his tennis coaching. And ever since then, as I say, I doubt that we've actually played tennis together on any more than a handful of occasions, because, he's just genuinely in a different league. It would be like me going running with Paula Radcliffe. There really is not a lot of point in it.
Moving over to a more serious exercise, recently you took part in an experiment about dementia. How difficult was that for you, and did it raise any questions that you hadn't considered before?
I mean, it certainly made an impact on me, and probably not an impact that I would have expected or predicted. I mean, perhaps it's one of the negatives about this kind of job. The longer that you've done it, you do find yourself put in to a lot of different situations and speak to a lot of different people, which is one of the great privileges of the job. But you can become maybe a little bit cavalier about that. And to be perfectly honest, although obviously you go along and in any situation you're committed to it and you're interested in it, but you can get a little bit, I've seen it all, done it all, got a t-shirt. I think I found it much more moving for me than I thought that I would. And that very kind of simple experiment of trying to, in some ways, and obviously it's limited, but in some ways simulate the experience of somebody with dementia, really did affect me in a way that I wouldn't have imagined that that it would. It just was a shock factor to be sort of taken out of your own kind of day-to-day capabilities that you become very comfortable with. You don't think about. They're just automatic. You switch on a computer, you sit down, you run over, you get yourself a cup of tea, you run back, you take a phone call, you text somebody at the same time, etc., etc. Not things that you would see as great achievements in life. It's just part of what you do as part of your normal function. And when everything becomes a huge uphill struggle and difficult and confusing and a little bit upsetting, well, it just takes the feet from you. And I think it did that with me too.
Okay, thank you, Kaye. Let's turn to Loose Women. Did you have any idea that programme would still be running today?
Gosh, no, I really, really didn't. Partly because you don't ever look that far forward in television, and also there's a kind of acceptance that, it's a very fast-moving industry. It's based on fashion to a certain extent, in that things are in vogue for a while and then they go out and then something else comes in. And that's the way it should be. I mean, I totally support that. But you've got that kind of hardwired into you, so you never really expect a programme to last an extended length of time. And really, really unusual in television terms. So just on the basis of that alone, in that it very rarely happens, I would never have expected it to go that long. Having said that, I can absolutely see now why it has gone for that long, because it has changed, or it's evolved in the time that it's been on air quite a lot, to respond to, different kind of trends and different people have come in and gone and things like that. But the basic premise that sustains it is, it's female conversation. And, I mean, I know sometimes it comes in for a bit of flack, well, is that inherently sexist? And I don't think it is at all. I think it is just a way of talking. We can talk about the same subject matter or subject matter that might be deemed to be more female, but it's more about the way that women relate to each other and lead conversations. And, you can usually see a contrast, and there's been a lot of talk about panel shows perhaps being overly male-dominated comedy panel shows. And it's not to be critical of them, but smart guys in a room do tend to interact in a certain way. It's very kind of quick fire, it's quite point scoring. There's usually a gag at the end of it. And in an all-female company, there does tend to be a different dynamic, and I think Loose Women reflects that. Okay.
You're very friendly with one of your co-panelists, Nadia Sawalha, and which of the other panelists would you say you're least friendly with?
The reality is, with the number of people that we have, there will be people that I rarely ever work with. And so from that point of view, just because you're not spending an awful lot of time with people, then obviously you're not going to be able to get a chance to strike up a connection. Genuinely, of the people that I have had close contact with on Loose Women, I've got a good relationship with them. And Colleen, I count as a really good friend. I'm really fond of Colleen. Jim McDonald's not there anymore. Now there's Carol McGiffin, but I would count both of them as good friends. Katie Price, one of the more controversial figures who's recently come in and who I've worked with quite a bit. And, I guess we couldn't be more opposite as personalities, but, we rub along fine. So there's no big issues. I mean, the difference with Nadia is that our friendship kind of comes out of Loose Women in that we spend a lot of time together socially, and our families spend time together socially. And I don't suppose I've developed that relationship really with anyone. But, go out for dinner with Colleen, with Jane Moore, with a number of the Loose Women team, and the backroom team, who are all fabulous as well. So, it's a pretty happy ship.
Okay. If you could choose one guest to appear on Loose Women, who would it be, and who would you have on your panel?
Well, apart from anything else, if you're choosing a guest for a programme, it has to be a guest that the audience of the programme is going to be interested in. Who I'm interested in is one factor, but, you are making a television programme for its audience. So on that basis, a balance of what the audience would want and what I would find interesting, I think Victoria Beckham would be a fascinating guest. There's a lot of interest in her. Clearly she's been very successful with her fashion brand, and she is famously enigmatic and doesn't really put herself up for interviews. So I think she would be a really good guest. On the panel, well, I would always have Nadia on the panel, not just because she's my buddy. Colleen, just always great on any panel, because even on the days that she doesn't say much, when she would say she can't be bothered, when she does, she's always just on the money. You know, she can just, her timing is amazing, her comedy timing is amazing, and some of her one-liners are just fantastic. So I think I would definitely have Colleen, because I think she would be able to soften Victoria up, maybe isn't the right expression, but kind of, you know, just get on her right side, if you like. So we'd have Colleen, we'd have Nadia. Well, I'm going to have to put myself in there, aren't I? Who else would I have? I have Janet Street Porter, actually.
I've just got a couple more questions for you. Do you think before you talk, or talk before you think?
Well, I mean, I definitely would say I am guilty of talking before I think, and I have probably got myself into trouble with that in the past, but I am becoming, I hope, more conscious of thinking before I talk. Perhaps more importantly these days is thinking before you tweet. If you're in a conversation with somebody, there is usually the opportunity to try and explain or give a bit of context, or, you know, continue a discussion, so that even if you kind of start off on the wrong foot, you can, you know, pull things round or get to a more positive place. But I think in the world of social media, particularly on Twitter, where, you know, the comments are so brief, if you don't think before you tweet, then it can have really poor consequences. So I think that's where I'm really working on thinking before I tweet.
I think I need to join you there. Too often I get myself into bother by just tweeting when I should be thinking.
It's a minefield. That one is a minefield.
Would you rather be born with an elephant's trunk or with a giraffe's neck?
I think I'd rather be born with a giraffe's neck. I think it's very elegant, very handy. You can see above the treetops, see who's coming and what's doing. And also it's very flexible as well. It's very beautiful. Whereas an elephant's trunk, I'm sure, is very handy for picking up donuts, but not the most attractive thing in the world, I would say.
Would you rather be the sandcastle or the wave?
Oh, the wave every time.
Why?
Yeah. Well, you're more powerful than the sandcastle. You keep moving, and you're flexible, and you keep coming back.
Okay. Finally, when all is said and done, will you have said more than you have done?
Yeah, sadly, probably.
Okay. Kate, thank you very much for phoning in today. And
oh, you're welcome. Nice to speak to you.
And you too.